Everyone calls Andrey Santos Chelsea's latest young signing who couldn't cut it. That's not what happened. This is the story of a £50 million midfielder Carlo Ancelotti labeled a complete player, a warning Chelsea refused to hear, and a Brazil World Cup elimination that proved Ancelotti right all along. Chelsea just handed Manchester United the next decade. January 2023. Chelsea pays an initial £13 million, rising to £20 million with add-ons, for a Brazilian midfielder named Andrey Santos. 22 years old, raw talent from Vasco da Gama. The plan? Development. Loan spells. Eventually, a spot in the first team. Standard stuff. Except nothing about what happened next followed any standard script. This wasn't some unproven prospect plucked from obscurity. Santos had already demonstrated advanced tactical intelligence at Vasco, reading passing lanes and dictating tempo in Brazil's top flight. Chelsea's scouting team saw a midfielder with spatial awareness beyond his years, someone who could process the game at Premier League speed. But seeing potential and giving it the minutes to develop are two completely different things. By May 2025, Carlo Ancelotti takes over as Brazil's national team manager. 5 Champions League titles, 3 decades of top-tier football management. The man who built Real Madrid's dynasty around Modric and Cruz, who molded Pirlo into the defining, deep-lying playmaker of a generation. And he's watching a Chelsea midfielder who would later move to Manchester United that nobody in England is talking about. Because while Santos is bouncing between loan spells and sporadic appearances, Ancelotti is paying attention, not to highlight reels, not to transfer valuations, to the actual player. February 2026. Ancelotti goes public. He calls Andrey Santos a complete midfielder. Not promising, not developing, complete. Ancelotti admitted he barely knew who Santos was before observing him for 1 week in the national team setup, during his evaluation of the squad. That's all it took for one of football's greatest tacticians to realize what Chelsea apparently couldn't see. Think about what that means. Ancelotti has spent his career building midfields. He knows what separates functional from world class. He's watched thousands of players. And after 7 days with Santos in camp, he's convinced enough to stake his public reputation on a single word: complete. So how does a player earn that kind of praise from Carlo Ancelotti and still end up sold 6 months later? Subscribe to this channel and you'll start noticing how many of these hidden football stories emerge. Let's talk about what complete actually means when Ancelotti says it. He's not handing out compliments for effort. This is a manager who built midfields around Modric, Cruz, and Pirlo. Players who could control a match with positioning alone, who made the hardest passes look routine because their technical security under pressure never wavered. When he uses that word, he's describing tactical intelligence, technical security under pressure, and positional awareness most players spend a decade trying to develop. Santos had it at 22, and Ancelotti saw it in 7 days. But it's more specific than that. Complete means Santos can sit deep and shield the backline, but also step forward and link play. It means he reads where pressure is coming from 2 passes before it arrives. It means his first touch consistently kills the ball dead, no matter how fast it comes in, and his second touch puts it exactly where the next phase of attack needs it. Ancelotti has coached players who could do 1 or 2 of those things brilliantly. Santos, at 22, could do all of them consistently. That's what complete means, and that's what Chelsea had sitting on their bench before selling him to Manchester United. But here's where Chelsea's decision-making becomes impossible to defend. June 2025. Santos tells the media he wants to stay at Chelsea. He wants regular starting minutes. He was thinking ahead to the 2026 World Cup, and he knows what Ancelotti needs to see. Consistent high-level football. Not loan spells in France. Not sporadic cup appearances. Game time in the Premier League with a top 6 club. That was the ask. Clear. Direct. Reasonable. Santos had just finished a loan spell at Strasbourg where he scored 10 goals from midfield. 10. As a defensive midfielder, he wasn't asking for a favor. He was asking for a pathway. Chelsea said no. Not explicitly. They just didn't give him the minutes. The 2025 to 2026 season unfolds under Enzo Maresca, then Liam Rosenior. Different managers, same result. During his time at Chelsea, Santos sat. He gets cup minutes. He gets late substitutions when matches are already decided. But he doesn't get the consistent Premier League starts that would prove to Ancelotti he was match ready for the World Cup. And every week that passes is another week Ancelotti is watching, taking notes, and realizing his complete midfielder isn't actually playing. Then Xabi Alonso arrives as permanent manager on July 1st, 2026. New era. New tactical setup. Perfect moment to integrate a midfielder Ancelotti himself has publicly endorsed. Alonso built his reputation on sophisticated midfield structures. He knows the position intimately. And Chelsea had previously sidelined Santos before sanctioning his transfer. Why? Because they had other midfielders. Because Santos hadn't proven himself in their system yet. Because the decision-makers at Stamford Bridge apparently know better than the man who won 5 Champions Leagues as a manager. Think about the absurdity of that. You have a manager who reshaped possession football at Real Sociedad and Bayer Leverkusen. A manager who understands midfield play better than almost anyone in world football. And you have Carlo Ancelotti, one of the greatest managers in history, telling you publicly that this player is complete. And the decision is still to keep him on the bench. That's not caution. That's institutional blindness. Ancelotti wasn't bluffing. May 18th, 2026. Brazil announces the final 26-man World Cup squad. Andrey Santos is not on it. He made the preliminary 55-man list. He had already earned widespread praise as a complete midfielder. He has 6 senior caps for Brazil. He's proven he can operate at international level. But when the final names are read, Santos is watching from home. And Ancelotti explained that intense competition for midfield spots ultimately shaped the final selection. Not talent, not form, not tactical fit, playing time. The one thing Chelsea could have controlled. The one variable they refused to address. Ancelotti had made his assessment clear in February. He told them what he needed to see. They ignored it, and it cost Santos a World Cup. But more than that, it exposed exactly how Chelsea operates. They treat players like assets on a balance sheet rather than careers that need careful management. Santos prioritized regular minutes and sought an exit. He asked for minutes. He did everything right, and Chelsea couldn't figure out how to give him what he needed. July 5th, 2026. Brazil loses to Norway in the round of 16, 2-1. East Rutherford, New Jersey. 24 years since Brazil last lifted the trophy, and Carlo Ancelotti is standing in a press room explaining how he's going to rebuild the squad for 2030. He names Andrey Santos as a key pillar of that rebuild. The same player he left out when finalizing the tournament squad, not as a prospect, not as a development project, as a pillar. Ancelotti is committing to a major overhaul of the Seleção, tearing down the old guard and building something new. And Santos, who struggled to secure regular starts at Stamford Bridge, is central to that vision. You see the pattern? Ancelotti wanted Santos at the World Cup. He publicly praised him. He listed him in the preliminary squad. But he couldn't justify taking a midfielder who wasn't getting consistent minutes at Chelsea. That's not favoritism. That's not a grudge. That's a manager making the only call he could with the information in front of him. And Chelsea gave him no choice. International managers live and die by form, by sharpness, by whether a player is getting the minutes to stay match fit and tactically locked in. Santos had none of that because Chelsea refused to provide it. 4 days later, Manchester United announces the signing of Andrey Santos, £48 million up front, another £2 million in add-ons. 5-year contract running until 2031. Chelsea gets a 10% sell-on clause, which sounds smart until you realize they just sold a player. Ancelotti called complete for less than they paid for half the squad sitting on their bench. Michael Carrick is the permanent manager now, former midfielder. Someone who played the position at the highest level for over a decade. Deep understanding of what it takes to control a match from deep. And he calls Santos a dream to work with. Mature, communicative, tactically fluent. Everything Ancelotti saw in 1 week, Carrick is seeing in training every single day. But there's more context here. Carrick isn't just any former midfielder. He's someone who built a career on positional intelligence and understated brilliance. He knows what it looks like when a young player has the instincts that can't be taught. And within days of working with Santos, he's using words like dream. That's not standard new signing praise. That's a manager recognizing something rare. August 2026 preseason. Santos features alongside Xabi Mainu and Yuri Tielemans in United's midfield rotation. They demolish Atletico Madrid. They hold PSG to a draw. And in that PSG match, Santos completes 81 passes. 81. Dictating play from deep, switching the tempo, breaking pressing traps with one-touch combinations. Doing everything Ancelotti said he could do, except now he's doing it in a Manchester United shirt instead of a Chelsea one. His passing quality matches the high numbers. The passes that bypass 2 lines. The third-man runs that pull defenders out of shape. The awareness to recycle possession when the forward pass isn't on. That's what complete looks like in action. Santos even speaks about the move with a maturity that makes Chelsea's decision look worse. He talks about Carrick as the perfect coach for a midfielder trying to learn, about how much he can absorb from someone who played the position at the highest level. There's no bitterness, no public complaints about Chelsea, just a player grateful to finally have the opportunity he's been asking for. If this is hitting different, take a second to hit like. It genuinely helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to see it. Let's talk about what Chelsea actually lost here. Santos scored 10 goals in League One during his loan spell with Strasbourg. 10. As a defensive midfielder. That's not a fluke. That's a player who understands when to arrive late in the box, when to gamble on second balls, when to step up and finish. He's earned 6 senior caps for Brazil. He's 22 years old. And the player development pathway Chelsea supposedly specializes in? They had him for 3.5 years and couldn't figure out how to give him the minutes that would have kept him in a World Cup squad. Manchester United figured it out in 3 weeks. Carrick integrates him immediately. The midfield partnership with Mainu and Tielemans clicks from day one. United fans are watching pre-season and asking where this guy has been. The answer? Sitting on Chelsea's bench while the club signed more midfielders instead of trusting the one Ancelotti had already validated. It's the same story Chelsea has repeated over and over. Acquire talented young players, loan them out, fail to integrate them, sell them for profit. Except this time, they sold someone a World Cup winning manager called Complete. That 10% sell-on clause? It only matters if United eventually sells Santos. But if Carrick is right, if Santos becomes the midfielder Ancelotti says he already is, United won't be selling. They'll be extending his contract and building around him for the next decade. Chelsea will get nothing. They'll watch him anchor Brazil's midfield in 2030. They'll see him lift trophies at Old Trafford. And they'll have a 10% stake in a transfer that will never happen. Because top clubs don't sell their best midfielders in their prime. They extend them. They build around them. They make them untouchable. Casemiro called Santos personally after the World Cup squad announcement, shocked that Ancelotti left him out, shocked that Chelsea had not made him a regular starter, urged him to force the move to United. That's a 5-time Champions League winner, a player who understands what world-class midfield play looks like, telling a 22-year-old that his current club is wasting him. And Santos listened. Casemiro wasn't doing this as a favor. He saw something in Santos that reminded him of his own trajectory. A midfielder with the tools to dominate matches but stuck at a club that couldn't see it, so he picked up the phone and made it happen. Andrey Santos was too good to waste on a club that couldn't see what they had. Ancelotti saw it in a week. Carrick saw it in days. Chelsea had 3.5 years and still couldn't figure it out. That's not a player problem. That's an institutional failure. That's a recruitment structure that identifies talent, but a management structure that can't deploy it. That's a club so focused on the next signing that they forget to develop the ones they already have. July 2026. Ancelotti commits to rebuilding Brazil around younger players for 2030. Santos was left off that final list. Not as a prospect. As a pillar. The same player Chelsea decided wasn't worth the minutes. The same player United paid £50 million for without hesitation. And the same player who, if Ancelotti and Carrick are both right, just became the best midfield signing of the 2026 transfer window. He was already that player when Chelsea let him go. They just couldn't see it. Chelsea fans will tell you they got good value. £50 million for a player who barely featured. Smart business. Except that logic only works if you ignore everything Ancelotti said. If you pretend the World Cup snub wasn't a direct result of Chelsea's refusal to play him, if you ignore the fact that United's midfield looks completely different with Santos anchoring it, true value is recognizing you have a complete midfielder and giving him the platform to prove it. What did Ancelotti warn us about? He told us Santos was complete. He showed us exactly what his former club Chelsea needed to do to keep him relevant for the national team. And when Chelsea ignored that, he proved his point by leaving Santos home and watching Brazil crash out in the round of 16. That's not hindsight. That's a manager giving a club a roadmap and watching them crumple it up. Ancelotti doesn't make empty threats. When he says a player is complete, he means it. When he says that player needs minutes, he's not negotiating. He's stating a requirement. And Chelsea treated it like a suggestion. United signed a standout midfielder looking to establish himself on the international stage. They signed a player tipped to make a major impact across the league. They signed the player who, at 22, already dictates tempo like he's been doing it for a decade. And Chelsea? Chelsea get to watch. They get to watch him develop into exactly what Ancelotti said he already was. They get to watch United build their next great midfield around a player they had for 3.5 years. They get to explain to their fans why a £13 million investment turned into a £50 million sale instead of a decade-defining player. Was this a tragic miscalculation? Or the moment Chelsea finally paid for ignoring the warning signs everyone else could see? Drop your take in the comments. If any of this stuck with you, like and subscribe. There's so much more hiding in plain sight.